What caused the deterioration of your relationship with her? My lack of rapport with her was evident even before my arrival. It didn't appear like we were very powerful when we were together. Colin Gosselin, son of Jon and Kate Gosselin, has broken his silence and revealed a shocking secret about his mother. After years of silence and isolation, Colin finally speaks out about the emotional and physical abuse he endured, including being locked up by Kate. My mom got violent. My mom always told me no one would believe me. I was cut off from everyone. A shattered Gosselin family facade begins to crumble under the weight of Jon's efforts to win back his son and expose the truth. Because of this, many start to wonder about Kate's motivations and the truths behind their dysfunctional family. I'm not angry with him, never have and never will. The public's perception of the Gosselin family was deceitful. Fans of Jon and Kate +8 were captivated by their seemingly ideal but chaotic life for a long time. The birth of their 8 children, twins and sextuplets included, propelled Jon and Kate to fame. Having such a large family isn't always easy, and their reality show showed that. The spotlight was on Kate, a mother who received accolades for her no-nonsense approach to raising her children. She loved everyone, but being tough was hard for her. Hey, it appeared, the public beheld a mother who also happened to be famous. She claimed she would stop at nothing to ensure her children were safe, and she had rigid regulations. However, one child in particular had a very different experience living behind the scenes at the Gosselin residence. Being Colin Gosselin was so unlike his brothers. Unlike most people, he wasn't shy or polite. Since he was curious and self-reliant, Kate thought he was being defiant. No one responded to his inquiries, but he persisted. Rules that were unclear to him were disregarded. The cost to him was substantial. When it came to Colin, Kate was kinder than when it came to the other kids. His punishments were harsher than the timeouts given to children his age. When they were reprimanded, he found himself in even more trouble. As time went on, he began to notice a trend. Instead of seeing him as a loved one, everyone else treated him like an issue. His treatment deteriorated as he aged. Truthfully, Kate was the kind of mother who kept herself busy while still loving her children. Because he was the child she was unable or unwilling to care for, Colin became the victim. When Kate finally had enough, she devised a plan to permanently remove him from her life. Behind the scenes of reality television, there are deceitful practices. Everything that viewers see has been meticulously plotted and edited to convey an engaging narrative. Controlling a story is incredibly powerful, and Kate Gosselin understood this better than anyone. From the outside looking in, she appeared to be a mother of 8 who was both overwhelmed and competent, doing her best to maintain some semblance of order in her otherwise disorganized household. Strict, methodical, and rule-abiding, she was an exemplary student. It was all for love, even though she came across as strict. That was the general consensus, anyway. The news of Colin's decision to come out and share a pivotal story about his mother shocked many. The reality was considerably less pleasant at home for the Gosselins behind the scenes of their reality show, which brought them fame. Her regulations served as a means of controlling individuals as well as maintaining order. Actually, the littlest one who used that power the most was Colin. Colin has struggled with Kate's overbearing parenting style since he was a young boy. He wasn't behaving in a way that would have caused you concern about his level of rebellion. All he did was show an interest, voice his opinions when he thought something was amiss, and ask questions when he didn't understand something. Colin was not as obedient as his brothers. Opposed to their actions, he spoke out, and according to Kate, that was unacceptable. The treatment they received was rather unchanged at first. With him, Kate exhibited less patience and adopted a more stern tone. The children were not subject to Colin's severe punishments. When things went wrong, he was usually the one to blame. But as time passed, those subtle distinctions became the things that isolated people. It wasn't just punishment, Colin was also shoved aside. He felt the same way Kate did when his brothers began to treat him differently, furious. Whether they believed he was the true culprit or were simply frightened of breaking the rules, they obeyed her. Because he didn't act like the other kids, Colin stood out to Kate. Suddenly, he was no longer a part of the program. His appearances became increasingly rare. There were 7 children rather than 8 on the family vacation. He was not present when his picture was taken. There wasn't much excitement at the exit. At no point did any of the characters on screen acknowledge that something was amiss. His whereabouts remained a mystery thereafter. For a straightforward explanation, Kate informed the press that she was unable to continue caring for Colin at home due to his special needs. The general public saw the mother's decision as rational, believing that she was protecting her child's health by making a difficult but essential choice. However, Colin was aware of the reality despite being imprisoned in an inappropriate location. This is what he said in an interview describing her as pure evil. In that room my mother built, she often tied my hands and feet together and locked me in there for most or all of the day, on multiple days. People were shocked to hear this and couldn't comprehend how the loving mother they saw on TV could have been so terrible. Their perspective shifted, though, when they discovered that Colin's expulsion was motivated by Kate's desire for him to depart rather than any genuine need for assistance. He endured 2 years of isolation, hoping that someone would take notice of his plight and provide assistance after being cut off from his family. Until Colin figured out how to contact her, everything proceeded according to plan, and everyone believed Kate's story. His account of the Gosselin family defied all expectations when he did speak. For the majority of children, home is the one place they feel the most secure, loved, and accepted. However, Colin Gosselin found that his home had become a prison where he felt confined and powerless. His every action was closely observed, his inquiries were met with animosity, and his mere presence was perceived as a problem. Even as a little boy, he was aware that he was unique among his brothers. Kate had chosen him to be the tough one, not because he was bad. Once she made that decision, she couldn't escape. Stricter regulations, lengthier fines, and less pleasant treatment were the first noticeable changes. However, the gap between them became wider as time passed. Because of their mother's treatment of him, his brothers began to treat him as though he didn't belong. He felt more and more alone and terrified as they eroded the love he had for his family. Either they were afraid of upsetting Kate, or they had learned from childhood to blame Colin for everything that went wrong. The next thing you knew, he vanished one day with no word. Kate had him committed to a mental institution. Because everyone knew how difficult it was to raise 8 children, most people agreed with her reasoning. Few people questioned the rationale behind the removal of just one child. Few people questioned the definition of special needs in this context, and even fewer inquired as to why his own father had been denied a vote. The facility was not a good place for Colin to live. He was sent to a facility that did not resemble the organized therapy settings portrayed in media. On the contrary, it served as a prison. Because he was isolated and incarcerated, he was not receiving the personalized attention he needed to flourish. Days turned into nights and months into still nothing. Nobody came to visit him, nobody wrote to him, and nobody showed any indication that he was on anyone's mind. After always boasting about being the best parent ever and going to great lengths to shield her children, his mother suddenly severed all ties with him, treating him more like an annoyance than a son. Neither his brother's lack of empathy nor their fear of upsetting their mother's authority prevented him from confiding in them when he was in pain. Life continued outside, and Colin may have long since forgotten about him. Despite his overwhelming sense of isolation, he clung to the hope that his story was far from over. The likelihood that someone was concerned enough to seek him out was extremely low, and he wasted no time acting on the opportunity that presented itself to him when he learned how to communicate with someone outside of his isolation. It was game over for him. He had never stopped seeking for Jon Gosselin, so he reached out to him. While telling the Gosselin family story, Kate made sure that everyone saw her side of the story. Contrarily, Jon remained in the background and was depicted as the disturbed father who had abandoned his children, and yet Jon had never departed. After a nasty custody battle, Kate won and took full control thanks to her fame and well-kept image. This had severed all ties between him and his children. The media has reported that Kate has been truthful about what transpired. She was very authoritarian and Jon had no say in how she raised his children for a long time. Regardless of how far apart they were, he never stopped caring, particularly for Colin. It was always obvious to him that the kids were treated differently toward Colin ever since they were little. Since he was getting into more trouble and being yelled at more frequently, he could see that Kate was becoming angry with him. For as long as Jon could remember, Colin's curiosity and openness prompted him to reflect on his own qualities. Jon saw his son's independence as a strength, while Kate saw it as a sign of defiance. Not to mention that Kate's family did not tolerate disobedience. The fact that Kate had banished Colin showed Jon just how far she was willing to go to protect her family's reputation. Going away, Jon was startled, though not entirely so. The logic continued to annoy him. The term special needs was vague, and Kate refused to elaborate. In that case, why was Jon unaware that Colin was struggling? Why wasn't he given the opportunity to have a say in his son's fate? And all the official authority was with Kate. Conversely, Jon was excluded from the child's life for a long time and did not have any rights to him. Whatever was wrong with Colin, he couldn't figure it out. He was left to ponder and imagine the gravest possible outcome. His worst fears were realized after what felt like an eternity. A letter was found. Even though it was risky, Colin managed to send this desperate plea for help. "Dad, please come get me," through shaky and rushed writing, but the message was painfully clear. Imprisoned, abandoned, and rendered speechless, he had been confined, but now he was speaking, and he pleaded with the audience to listen. Jon was unconcerned about it. Upon reading those words, he knew he needed to take action. Too much time had passed since anyone had heard from his son. He was abandoned to endure his pain as everyone bought into Kate's meticulously constructed narrative of events. Now that the truth was emerging, though, Jon would stop at nothing to shield his son from harm. Colin is supported by Jon. The arrival of Colin's letter had a profound impact on Jon Gosselin. The length of time they battled for custody, the distance between them, or their portrayal as the absent father were all irrelevant at this point. He felt his son's hand extended. His son had requested assistance. Even though he hadn't done anything in years and Kate had grown into a strong person, no time was wasted by Jon. No time was wasted by Jon. He felt terrible for Colin and immediately set out to find a way to get his son back home. Unfortunately, it wasn't as easy as picking him up from the hospital and taking him home. Given that Kate was still the primary caretaker for all of their children, it would be extremely illegal for Jon to remove Colin from the mental institution. Kate was on high alert as usual. She had no doubt that she was the one responsible for her children's upbringing. Since she had been forthright about the reasons behind her decision to expel Colin, many believed she was acting in Colin's best interest. Jon would need more than just common sense to challenge her decisions. In order to disprove Kate's story, he would have to rip through the legal system, casting doubt on her actions. Still, Jon showed no signs of fear. Colin would be forever isolated from society and forgotten unless he took action and demanded the truth to be revealed. He sought out legal counsel immediately so that he could begin to sort through the maze of legal issues blocking his path. In addition, he made an effort to contact anyone who might have information that would reveal the truth regarding Colin's situation. It was also around this time that Jon began to confide in others about his concerns. Even though he was aware of the dangers, he also knew that his wife Kate would eventually cave and allow him to see their son if word got out. Jon was very forthright in his interviews. He spoke frankly about the emotions he was experiencing and how the narrative surrounding Colin's role was muddled and incomplete. My private life with my children is being blasted out by someone who wasn't even there, said the man. He was adamant that his son Colin's voice should be heard and that he would not tolerate anyone else making decisions regarding his life without consulting him first. Responses from the media were mixed. As the father attempting to protect his son from harm, Jon had some supporters who saw him as doing the right thing. Many bought into Kate's narrative, which she had painstakingly constructed over the years. Everyone could see that Jon's brawl was drawing attention to himself, and more significantly, that it was exposing Kate's frailty. No matter how much control and trickery Kate tried to employ, she could not remain hidden invisibly forever. The truth was starting to show up in her meticulously planned life. It all came crashing down for Kate when Jon began to stand up for Colin. The outside world struggled to comprehend Kate's reality, the mother who, in order to ensure her children's safety, had to make difficult decisions. She had been the one to persevere through adversity, bring up 8 children, and manage the pressures of stardom, all while maintaining the unity of her family. However, fissures were beginning to appear beneath the surface. Throughout the years, Kate maintained strict control over the narrative. Despite its untruthfulness, she had portrayed the role of the ideal mother. Her carefully crafted public persona gave the impression that she was constantly watching out for her children, which contributed to her fame. As news of Jon's fight spread, opinions about Kate started to shift. Her decisions regarding Colin were questioned by others as time passed. Why she sent him to the hospital instead of letting the other kids stay home was a mystery to many. The fact that Jon was kept in the dark and unable to communicate with his own child for an extended period of time also shocked many. The media meticulously recorded her every word, rehashing her previous statements and unearthing inconsistencies. While the pressure was building, Kate chose to ignore it. She reiterated over and over that she had made the right decision for Colin because he had special needs and required medical attention. She maintained her facade of a caring parent who was merely trying to protect her child for as long as she could. People still weren't buying it, despite the mounting pressure. After Colin was expelled, Jon's attorneys began to investigate further, interviewing those who knew Kate well and collecting evidence. Unsettling details were unearthed, such as Kate's supposedly contradictory statements, the absence of evidence to support her assertions regarding Colin's needs, and a pattern of controlling behavior that extended beyond Colin alone. Because of the family's public image, Kate's activities were kept hidden for a long time, but Jon was fighting not only to get his child back, but also to expose them. The public started to question Kate's true intentions as their arguments escalated. Did she genuinely want what was best for her children, or was she simply abusing her position of power to suit her own agenda? It became apparent that this wasn't merely a family gathering, as Kate's defenses crumbled. Piece by piece, the carefully constructed reality of the Gosselin family crumbled before the eyes of the world. The light of truth was starting to break through, and Jon was leading the charge to uncover it. Colin sensed a sense of impending freedom that he had never experienced before. However, with all eyes on the Gosselins' tarnished reputation, Kate's future course of action remained uncertain. Would she resist or suffer the consequences of years of being manipulated and deceived? Things were getting dicey, and the battle was far from over. After Colin returned, the struggle to regain his life and freedom was far from finished. No amount of media attention or legal action could bring Colin out of the mental institution, so his release remained an elusive goal. By ignoring the reality of Colin's suffering and Jon's rights, Kate made her stance crystal clear. She would stop at nothing to maintain dominance over her children, and Colin was no exception. Things were beginning to improve, though, thanks to Jon's resolve and Colin's passionate plea. For Jon, trying to put himself in his shoes was a daunting task. He struggled to comprehend the idea that his son had spent so many years incarcerated, isolated, and neglected. Even though his son had the fundamental right to an audience, his mother spread the word that he was a problematic child who necessitated his removal from the family. His mother's burial of her son under her authority was something I could no longer bear to witness. It seemed like there was always some progress toward a positive outcome for Colin's case, with each phone call, court appearance, an effort to reach out to individuals who could assist him. A long and exhausting battle in court was finally worthwhile for Jon. After hearing his case, the judge granted him limited temporary custody of Colin so that Colin could acclimate to being back in his original environment. The decision did state that the change would occur gradually. Even though Kate was furious, Jon knew this was only the beginning. Even though a lot happened after the court case, Colin's emotional and psychological recovery had only just begun. Colin and his father did not have a happily ever after when he visited his dad's house. They didn't embrace him or accept him easily when he returned. Feelings of betrayal, confusion, and fear persisted throughout his time in the hospital, which deeply affected him. Though he was unsure of where to begin, Jon was prepared to assist him in his recovery. Getting back into the swing of things at home was a real challenge. Colin avoided eye contact and rarely spoke, frequently retreating to his room. Even his own family had forgotten him. Now he merely existed as a hushed specter of the boy who had once resided in a bustling mansion. That being said, Jon remained composed. With Colin's desire for solitude, he was well aware. The fact that he had not forgotten about him was something he was determined to convey. In an effort to mend a long-shattered relationship, Jon toiled tirelessly every day to make the place feel safe and inviting. Instead of pressuring Colin to open up, he simply assured him that he would be available at any time. Time caused the barriers between them to crumble. Colin, and not only Jon, had to rediscover the art of trusting. Like him, his brothers were clueless about what transpired after he vanished. The moment they allowed him back into their home, an unusual tension would fill the air. The Gosselin children placed a high value on adhering to their mother's regulations, and they even came to believe what she said had happened. Rumor had it that Colin was a problematic and troublesome child. Reuniting with him forced them to confront the reality their brother had been forcibly removed from their lives without just cause. The path ahead would not be smooth, Jon knew. For quite some time, Colin had been in an environment where he didn't feel loved or noticed. When Colin Gosselin was at Jon's house, it wasn't just Colin Gosselin. He deserved all the love, care, and attention due a son, and he was Jon's son. Even though he knew it would be a while, Jon was prepared to fight until his son felt safe again. Getting everything back would take a long time. As Colin adjusted to his new life with Jon, the public learned that Kate's life began to unravel. She had come to see herself as an ideal, goal-oriented mother who was incapable of failing her children. It was, however, starting to fail. Jon's outspoken defense of his son Colin proved that Kate's story was completely untrue and accomplished more than simply bringing him home. Outside of secret meetings, she could no longer deny what had transpired to Colin. Public sentiment shifted as news outlets dove further into Colin's prison life and more details emerged. Even those who had previously defended Kate and lauded her for remarkably juggling her 8 children under the scrutiny of the media began to question her motives. Concerns about Colin's treatment have grown, and now people are demanding explanations. Colin had to be hospitalized, according to Kate. Was she genuinely trying to help him, or was she simply trying to get rid of a child who didn't match her ideal family? Jon wasted no time getting emotional upon seeing his son again. He persisted in publicly lamenting Colin's mental and physical suffering while he was away. No one outside of Jon's immediate family knew what was wrong with him, but they did hear rumors of a new and much worse altercation. There were indications that something extremely bad was happening, even though no official remarks were made at the time. According to some news outlets, an unaffiliated third party with strong ties to the matter had issued an emergency protective order. Those on the inside had dropped hints about internal investigations and sealed court documents. With each new piece of information, the amount of speculation grew. The majority of it indicated a deteriorating father-son relationship marked by violent outbursts and confrontations. Rumor has it that Jon's insecure and erratic behavior toward Colin culminated in an incident where Colin was physically hurt due to stress. People were worried about Jon's capacity to be a parent after hearing about his lengthy hospital stays due to these injuries. Since neither side came clean, suspicions grew, and no precise timeline or detailed description of what transpired was ever made public. Jon Gosselin was formally charged with a violent domestic incident at the start of 2025. Based on multiple sources, medical reports, text messages, and witness statements were among the pieces of evidence against Jon. However, due to laws protecting minors, many court papers were kept secret, allegedly including aggravated child abuse with the intent to cause major bodily harm. The charges were deemed extremely serious by insiders. Everyone was shocked by the news. Could this quiet, unassuming father, who had done everything in his power to keep his children safe, genuinely harm even one of them? The idea that the unarguable husband could physically harm his own son was hard for viewers of Jon and Kate +8 to fathom. For all those years, what had actually been transpiring in the background? Katie gave off an air of superiority. Was it in her nature, or was she compelled to adopt that behavior in order to safeguard her children? A few individuals speculated that Jon's antisocial conduct may have stemmed from his troubled upbringing. He was determined that no one would ever forget the pain his son had endured. As the press flocked to Jon, his growing platform served as a beacon of truth for those who had been marginalized or ignored. Not only was he fighting for Colin, but he also wanted Kate to pay for her actions. Defending herself became Kate's default mode as the pressure mounted. She stated in her public remarks that she had acted in Colin's best interest and that she had no intention of causing him harm. Those assertions, however, were not coherent. The imperfections in her meticulously constructed persona became too easy to overlook. Her attempts to regain command of the narrative were met with disbelief. Some even demanded an investigation into her behavior, and for the first time, people began to question her motivations. Even the once respected mother, Kate, was now the center of attention. The damage had already been done, regardless of her attempts to shift blame onto her ex-husband, the system, or anyone else. Following Jon's struggle for Colin, Kate was unable to conceal the truth any longer. For Colin, this was merely the beginning. The extent of his pain was now obvious to all. He had hoped his mother's behavior would remain a thing of the past, but opening up to everyone about his predicament was a watershed moment in his road to recovery. No longer was he concealed or kept silent. He could finally begin his path to healing and uncover the long-suppressed truth. The consequences, however, were only beginning for Kate. Her once perfect reputation was crumbling, and the years she had spent overseeing the Gosselin family story were swiftly coming to a close. Everyone now knew her true identity because the truth swiftly spread beyond those who dared to conceal it. Did Kate Gosselin's decision to place her son in a foster home resonate with you? Feel free to express yourself in the space provided. Stay safe, and we'll catch you in the upcoming video.